Winter in medieval Europe was not a season, it was an ordeal. When the forests froze beneath iron skies and snow swallowed the paths between villages, survival depended on preparation, skill, and relentless endurance. For medieval hunters, winter was both enemy and opportunity. Game grew scarce, nights grew long, and the forest seemed to close in with cold indifference. Yet these hunters, whether free yeomen, foresters serving a lord, or desperate outlaws hiding beyond the law, learned how to endure months of freezing wind, hunger, and isolation. This is the story of how they survived. In regions like northern England, the Germanic lands of the Holy Roman Empire, and the Scandinavian frontiers, winter forests transformed into stark, white labyrinths. Under the rule of kings such as Henry II, royal forests were legally protected hunting grounds, and winter patrols ensured poachers stayed away. But outside strict royal domains, the woods belonged to those bold enough to brave them. The forest in winter was quieter but more dangerous. Snow muffled footsteps, yet revealed every track. Branches creaked like distant doors. Frozen rivers became temporary highways, but also deadly traps if ice gave way. The canopy thinned, exposing hunters to biting winds. Temperatures could plummet far below freezing, especially during harsh climatic periods, like the later centuries of the medieval warm period's decline. For hunters, winter stripped the forest down to essentials: shelter, fire, food, and movement. Medieval hunters did not possess insulated synthetics or waterproof membranes. Their survival began with layers of wool and fur. Wool retained warmth even when damp, making it invaluable. A typical winter hunter might wear a linen undertunic, a thick woolen kirtle, hose, and a heavy cloak fastened with a brooch. Fur-lined hoods, often rabbit, fox, or squirrel, protected head and neck, where heat escaped most rapidly. Leather boots were stuffed with straw or moss for insulation. Gloves were often fingerless for dexterity, exposing skin to frostbite risk. Hunters learned to flex fingers constantly, swinging arms to maintain circulation. The forest itself supplied materials for repair. If boots tore, rawhide patches could be stitched with sinew. If cloaks soaked through, they were dried near fire, though smoke left everything smelling permanently of ash. Clothing was not fashion, it was survival architecture. No skill mattered more than firecraft. Without fire, a hunter would perish in a single, brutal night. Flint and steel were common tools by the High Middle Ages. Hunters carried dried tinder in leather pouches, scraped birch bark, dried fungus like amadou, or charred cloth. In snowbound conditions, keeping tinder dry required constant vigilance. Many hunters wrapped fire kits in waxed cloth or animal bladders. Sheltered fire sites were essential. Hunters often dug shallow pits, lining them with stones to reflect heat. In heavy wind, fallen logs formed windbreaks. Some constructed lean-tos angled to trap warmth from a long fire placed parallel to the shelter wall. The long fire was particularly effective in winter. Instead of a small campfire, hunters built elongated beds of coals, radiating steady heat throughout the night. Sleeping between fire and reflective barrier allowed them to survive sub-zero temperatures. But fire had risks. Smoke revealed position. In royal forests governed under systems influenced by rulers like William the Conqueror, unauthorized presence could bring harsh punishment. Hunters sometimes minimized flame, relying on embers to reduce visibility. In winter, fire meant life, but also exposure. Temporary forest shelters varied by region. In parts of Eastern Europe, hunters dug snow trenches roofed with branches and hides. In alpine zones, caves provided ready-made refuge, though predators sometimes claimed them first. More commonly, hunters built debris huts. A central ridgepole rested between forked branches, then layered with smaller limbs and thick heaps of leaves, moss, or pine boughs. Snow, ironically, became insulation when piled atop the structure. The trapped air within snow provided surprising warmth. In Scandinavia, techniques resembling earlier Norse traditions, echoing survival knowledge from eras tied to figures like Leif Erikson, influenced woodland survival. Though centuries separated Viking explorers from later medieval hunters, the knowledge of using turf and earth insulation endured culturally. Shelters were small by necessity. A confined space warmed more quickly from body heat and fire reflection. Comfort was irrelevant. Efficiency was everything. Winter snow made animals visible. Deer, boar, and hare left clear imprints. Hunters became readers of the white page, interpreting stride length, depth, and direction. A single deer track could mean salvation, 100 pounds of meat, hide for clothing, sinew for thread. But pursuing game in deep snow drained energy. Hunters calculated risk carefully. Overexertion led to sweating. Sweat led to chilling. Chilling led to death. Some hunters used skis in northern regions. Others fashioned crude snowshoes from bent wood frames and rawhide webbing. While not universally common, such adaptations existed in areas influenced by northern traditions. Trapping often replaced active pursuit. Snares made of cordage or sinew were set along known game trails. Deadfall traps required minimal energy once constructed. Winter hunger encouraged patience. Yet snow betrayed hunters too. Their own tracks revealed patterns. Rival hunters, or forest wardens, could follow them easily. Survival meant not only finding prey, but avoiding becoming prey. Winter diets narrowed drastically. Fresh berries vanished, edible greens lay buried. Hunters relied on preserved stores, salted meat, dried fish, smoked venison, prepared in autumn. But supplies dwindled. A successful winter hunt might mean the difference between strength and starvation. Venison was prized, though in many regions hunting deer without permission violated forest law. Wild boar provided rich fat, crucial for calories. Hares and rabbits offered reliable protein. Even small birds trapped in nets added precious nourishment. Nothing was wasted. Marrow from bones delivered dense energy. Organs were consumed quickly before freezing solid. Fat was rendered into tallow for cooking and candles. Some hunters fished through ice holes in frozen rivers. Ice fishing required patience, but provided steady protein. In forested regions near lakes, this method could sustain small groups through prolonged cold spells. In desperate times, bark flour from inner tree layers supplemented meals. Acorns, leached of tannins, could be ground and mixed with coarse grains if available. Hunger sharpened senses, but also eroded morale. Hydration was often overlooked but critical. Eating snow lowered core temperature dangerously. Hunters melted snow in small pots or wooden containers near fire. If metal cookware was scarce, they used heated stones dropped into water-filled vessels carved from wood or stitched from bark. Frozen streams required breaking ice. Flowing water beneath was safer than stagnant pools. Dehydration weakened judgment, and in winter, poor decisions proved fatal. Some hunters travelled alone, especially those avoiding authorities. Others formed small bands, sharing duties, one maintaining fire, another checking traps, another scouting. Shared labour conserved energy. Rotating watch ensured fire remained alive through night. Storytelling, tales of saints, battles, or heroes like Robin Hood, lifted spirits during endless darkness. Though Robin Hood's legends were romanticized, the archetype of the forest outlaw reflected real tensions between survival and law. Isolation, however, could be deadly. Injury from a fall or infected wound without aid often meant slow death. Winter magnified every minor mistake. Bows remained primary hunting weapons across much of medieval Europe. The longbow, later famed in conflicts such as the Battle of Agincourt, was equally effective against deer. In winter, bowstrings had to be kept dry. Moisture weakened fibres. Hunters stored spare strings inside clothing to preserve warmth and flexibility. Spears and knives served for close encounters. Bow spears featured crossguards to prevent wounded animals from charging up the shaft. In snowbound forests, a wounded bow was terrifying, cornered, enraged, and desperate. Axes were indispensable. Beyond cutting wood, they shaped shelters and served as weapons of last resort. Every tool required maintenance. Cold made metal brittle and hands clumsy. Sharpening stones were treasured possessions. Winter sickness lurked silently. Frostbite blackened fingers and toes. Hypothermia dulled thought before extinguishing it. Smoke inhalation irritated lungs in confined shelters. Infections spread easily when wounds could not be cleaned properly. Herbal knowledge, garlic, honey poultices, and resin salves, offered limited protection. Medical theory of the time, influenced by classical authorities like Galen, emphasized balancing humours. But in the forest, practical remedies mattered more than theory. Survival often depended on resilience rather than medicine. Winter drove predators closer to human presence. Wolves, themselves hungry, followed scent trails of blood. While attacks on humans were rarer than legend suggests, competition for prey was real. Hunters sometimes shadowed wolf packs to locate herds. At other times, they avoided them entirely. Fire deterred most animals, but in severe winters, desperation overrode fear. The forest was a shared battlefield of hunger. For medieval minds, survival intertwined with faith. A hunter alone beneath frozen stars might whisper prayers to saints for protection. Shrines at forest edges offered spiritual reassurance before entering the wild. Winter tested not only body, but belief. Endurance became a form of devotion, proof of fortitude granted by divine will. The psychological weight of winter cannot be overstated. Days were short, darkness stretched endlessly. Without modern clocks, time blurred. Hunters marked days by moon phases and dwindling food. Yet winter always shifted. By late February, subtle signs emerged. Longer daylight, softer snow, distant bird calls. Survival through winter meant stepping into spring, lean but alive. For medieval hunters, enduring winter was not heroic adventure, it was necessity. Their knowledge passed quietly through generations. How to layer wool, how to build a long fire, how to read snow like scripture. They survived not by conquering the forest, but by understanding it. In the brutal stillness of medieval winter woods, survival belonged to those who respected cold, conserved strength, trusted skill, and never let the fire die.